rocking. Hi, welcome everyone to our November 6th, 2013 Shakopee City Council meeting. I'm Brad Tabke. Kim, could you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Whiting,
Here.
Councilmember Lehman,
Present.
Councilmember Clay,
In attendance.
Councilmember Heitzman,
Here.
Mayor Tabke.
Here. We all stand for the pledge, and tonight we have Boy Scouts here. You guys can come on up here. They're on their merit badge tonight. You can start whenever you're ready.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, guys. All right, item number 3, approval of the agenda. Do we have any additions or corrections? Mr. McNeil.
Mr. Mayor, if we could pull 4F6, which is the resolution canvassing the returns for the municipal election yesterday, we need a discussion on that one.
All right. Anything else from staff? Anything from council? All right, entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Councilor White, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Clay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Pass unanimously. Item number 4, consent business. Do we have any other changes to consent, Mr. McNeil? Councilor Lehman,
4A1.
you want to pull it off? Okay. Anything else? Councilor Lehman,
The consent agenda as modified.
do you have a second? Second. Second by Councilor Heitzman. Any discussion on that? Mr. McNeil, could you please read the consent agenda?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 4A1 was removed from consent for discussion. 4C1 approves payment to the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux community for topsoil used in 2013 street reconstruction project, the amount of $46,677.50. 4C2 adopts resolution 7374 certifying delinquent storm drainage and mowing fees for collection with tax rolls payable 2014. 4C3 authorizes staff to utilize repurchase agreements with Ag Power Enterprises, Inc. on a 2012 John Deere mower and a 2012 John Deere tractor in the amount of $13,658.63, and also authorizes the purchase of a cabin closure from Ag Power Enterprises for the price of $4,221.56. 4C4 authorizes fire rescue unit number 9511 to be surplus property and authorizes disposal at auction. 4D1 authorizes city officials to renew contracts with Delta Dental for employee dental insurance plans for 2014 and adopts resolution number 7375 adopting the city of Shakopee's contribution levels for employee insurance benefits for 2014. 4F1 approves payment of bills and electronic transfers in the amount of $3,046,916. 4F2 approves minutes of the October 15, 2013 City Council meeting. 4F3 adopts resolution 7376 approving a contract for private development with Scott County and Data Card Corporation for certain property within the city of Shakopee. 4F4 approves a garbage and recycling services transition plan with Dick Sanitation. 4F5 authorizes city staff and Foth Engineering to solicit competitive quotes through a competitive buying consortium for the acquisition of approximately 22,000 garbage and recycling carts for use with the new contract to begin June 1st, 2014. 4F6 was removed, and 4F7 declares listed furniture to be surplus property and authorizes appropriate sale or disposal of these items.
Thank you very much, sir. Any discussion on those items? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We move on to item number 5, recognition of involved citizens by city council. Is there anyone out there who would like to have 5 minutes to discuss an item that is not on our agenda this evening? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 7, business removed from consent agenda. Item 4A1 was removed by Councilor Lehman. Councilor Lehman.
Didn't have a chance to read the revised version on the table. Looks like there's some stuff crossed out and highlighted on multiple pages. Something to do with occupancy and sidewalks. If we could just get an overview of what that's all about.
Certainly, Councilor Lehman and members of the council, I apologize that you have this in this form. You may remember from the report that was in your packet, there was a condition that said there will be compliance with the resolution that defines what substantial completion is. That is a condition that I talked with both Mr. Sonstagard from Ryland and Mark Noble, who's been the project manager, about. And the language was supposed to have been changed. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to review the report because I was in a meeting in St. Paul when that report needed to be authorized for the packet. And I had only my phone screen, and you can't tell from my glasses, but my vision is not that good. So the changes basically are that instead of requiring full completion, with sidewalks installed, what is being proposed is that you will allow up to 12 building permits on lots within the subdivision. They can be obtained prior to the sidewalks being installed. There will only be temporary certificates of occupancy provided to those structures until the sidewalks are installed and accepted by the city. So that is really the sum and substance of the change. They requested the opportunity to have up to 12 building permits to get started in the subdivision, and this allows them to do that. The street has to be complete, but the sidewalks do not have to be installed until they want a permanent certificate of occupancy for those 12 lots.
So, resolution 6059, which defines substantially complete, is that still being met then in the new version?
No, it's not. That resolution, as I said, is one which defines substantial completeness
Yep.
and says that the sidewalks will be complete. And the specific conditions that were requested here, in which staff recommended, is that we allow the building permits to be issued, but that they only get temporary certificates of occupancy until the sidewalks are installed. So it is not technically being met. And after it was pulled from the last agenda, the reference to Resolution 6059 was supposed to have been pulled from the conditions of the motion.
Last question, Mayor. If they're temporarily occupied and the conditions aren't met, do we then kick them out or what?
We would not kick occupants of the home out, but since Ryland is also the builder, there is pressure on them to make sure that the sidewalks are properly installed and that they're accepted by the city. So we're pretty confident that will happen.
Shaloni?
Mayor, members of council, Councilor Lehman, I'd just like to add that we have in here as provisions, no more other building permits can be attained till the sidewalk is in, and we also have a financial security.
Yeah,
So
okay.
we will guarantee that the sidewalks will
All
get.
right. Sounds good.
All right,
Thanks for
Councilor
those
Clay.
questions, by the way.
We did something very similar to this about a year ago.
Valley Creek Crossing, we did something similar.
Were
Yes.
were the sidewalks already in on that portion at that time? So that, I guess the only thing that's different between that and this would be the sidewalk issue?
Correct.
Councilor Lehman?
Make a motion approving the issuance of building permits in Dakota Crossing subject to the 5 conditions recommended by staff in alternative number 1.
Second by Councilor Heitzman. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Item number 8, entertain a motion to recess for Economic Development Authority meeting.
Mr. Mayor, could we move?
Sorry.
4F6 was
Gonna do
removed.
4F6 now?
If we can do that.
Sorry.
That's okay.
4F6, Mr. McNeil.
Thank you. We need to, by state law, canvass results of yesterday's election. The abstract is not available tonight. We are advised that we should set a date sometime 3 to 10 days after the election. So if you look at the practicality of that, with City Hall being closed Monday for Veterans Day, sometime next Tuesday through Friday, we need probably about 3 minutes. What you're doing is basically adopting a resolution. And if we can get a quorum of you available, even an 8 a.m. meeting or a noon meeting, it shouldn't take long.
Do you have any specific dates in mind?
Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, we would be available for that.
Could it be a 7:30 meeting?
Be 7:30.
Which day?
Any of them?
All right. 7:30 on Wednesday?
Yeah, we can do that.
That's
Here
AM.
on Thursdays, so.
7:30 a.m. Yeah. Actually, if we do Thursday, that's Very good point. The 14th, Thursday, 14th at 7:30 a.m. Do we have at least 3 folks that can be there? 1, 2, 3. Okay, perfect.
Okay, thank you.
And so that will be set as a public meeting, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Actually, tonight, what we're going to do is you're going to adjourn to that time and day, so it'll be an adjourned part of this meeting.
Perfect.
7 AM. That's gonna be a long meeting. Then
Anything
you
else
just-
on that item? We're good? Okay, item number 8, recess for Economic Development Authority meeting. Need a motion?
So move.
Thank you, Counselor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Clay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passed unanimously. President Whiting.
We'll call to order the November 6th meeting of the Shakopee Economic Development Authority. Ms. Weckman, please make note of the roll.
Yes, Mr. President.
First item of business is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Mr. Lehman,
Motion to approve the agenda.
there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Tabke. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Consent business is item number 3. We have the minutes, the bill list, and it looks like the appointment of our candidate to fill the EDAC position. I have a motion to approve the consent items.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Clay. Is there a second?
Second.
By Mr. Tabke. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Last item is motion to adjourn. Mr. Lehman,
Motion to adjourn Tuesday, November 19th.
is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Heitzman. All in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned.
All right, thank you very much. We pull the Shakopee City Council meeting back to order, and we go to item number 10C1, discussion of winter parking restrictions and snow emergency concepts. Mr. Loney.
Thank you, Mayor. And members of the audience, and it's appropriate that we have this discussion right after a snowfall, so good timing. Council direction from the October 15th council meeting was to bring back some information on winter parking restrictions and discussion on a snow emergency parking concept. I did include in your packet what we did in 2001, the information that we put together to adopt and revise the ordinance. At that time, Shakopee was a calendar parking on everywhere in town. But as we were growing into the newer areas of town, it didn't seem to be relevant or necessary to do that type of parking scheme. It also got confusing with the number of cul-de-sacs and also curvilinear streets. People were getting confused on which side to park, and also for enforcement. So when we adopted that ordinance in 2001, we did put in, as you can see on the map here, highlighted in green is the area that remained, which would be north of 10th Avenue and east or west of County Road 17 to the river. That remained as calendar parking. The rest of the area, we changed that from November 1 to March 31st. No parking on the city streets from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m., regardless if it's snowing or not. If there's a 2-inch snowfall or more in our ordinance today, that triggers a automatic snow emergency. And at that point, then people are supposed to follow the winter parking restrictions of your area until the street has been plowed curb to curb. After that, you can go park on the streets, again, similar to, except for the winter parking restriction, like 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. So we did look at other cities, nearby cities were very similar to Chanhassen. Chanhassen is actually a little more restrictive. Savage and Burnsville are no parking 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. year-round. Lakeville we're very similar to, in Prior Lake. Chaska is the only city near us that has calendar parking throughout the city. And I know they would like to have a system similar to ours, talking to their public works folks. From our operation standpoint, as we look at this ordinance, if we go to a snow emergency where it's 2 inches or more, and last night we did have 2 inches or more, but it didn't stay on the street. but there might have been a lot of people parked on the street that would hamper the operations of the snow plowing. We would then need to have some towing of cars, and we're just not, the police department is not set up, and the towing facilities are not set up to really do an adequate amount of towing if we get a large number of cars parked on the street illegally. So that's why we would rather go to a more of an education, have this type of ordinance that we have now. It has worked from my standpoint. Of the 12 years we've had it, I get very few complaints. I get a few people that will call and ask me to interpret the ordinance for them so they understand it, but I've never had any real complaints. Anyway, I know council members have had those, but I have not. Some of the things that would happen on our typical snow day, if we would plow the streets that day, get the sidewalks open, alleys, and the next day, we come back and clean up the downtown area. If we have a number of what we call snowbirds, where they're parked in the street, we have to plow around them, we have to usually come back the next day. That will increase the amount of hours and time needed on the following day, and probably result in some overtime. But that's what used to happen when we had calendar parking throughout the city. It has improved greatly by keeping the cars off the street. It's also much safer for the operator and also for the public, not having a car on the street. And I did mention, I think one of the other issues mentioned was calendar parking throughout the whole city. Cul-de-sacs gets very confusing. Where do you park? Who gets to park on there? Which day? A lot of people go to sleep at night. It's an even day. Oh, it's an odd day. They just tend to forget. And in the Southbridge area, I did have a map here, but they are basically 30-foot wide streets with parking on one side year-round. So then where do you go parking on one side and one side? Who gets to park? It would be confusing out there. In most of the new areas, they do have 2 or 3 car garages and wide driveways. So I don't believe it has been that much of an impact. Chief Tate is here as well to answer any questions in enforcement. We've also have purchased, most of our equipment has plow and wings to plow the wider streets to eliminate as many passes. If we have to go around cars, usually have to pull up the wing. That takes time and effort, and it's probably not the best and safest again. So our recommendation is to leave the ordinance as it exists. If you want to see some changes, I guess we would have to get your direction in that regard and bring back an ordinance to reflect what changes you might want to have. But from an operation standpoint, it does work very well.
All right.
And
Thank you. Questions? Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, the issue that I struggle with on this for 12 years now is, and either one of staff might want to address it, but I'll give you my perspective in Old Shakopee. If there's no chance that it's going to snow tomorrow, but the policy is in effect, technically you can get ticketed for being on the proper side of the street between 2 and 6 in the morning, even though there's no chance of snow. So it'd be nice to be able to park there, even though there's no chance of snow, but you're gonna get a ticket, or you could get a ticket. So, but if we directed them to not enforce it when there's no chance of snow, then you've got the other side, the public then, including myself, gets in a habit of parking wherever and kind of just slips away from the policy, and then when a policy does need to be enforced for the plowing, you're neglecting it just out of half a stance of being used to doing this. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. We would love to be able to use the street when it's not gonna snow, but on the other side, I understand that if you allow us to do that, well, most likely we're gonna take advantage of it.
Chief, could you go through the education and enforcement that you do with regard to this ordinance for us, please?
Sure. Mr. Mayor, members of council, the police department has always taken a proactive education rather than enforcement approach to this. Typically, at the start of the ordinance, November 1st, we will issue warning tickets. Since this ordinance inception, we have always issued more warning tickets than we have issued actual citations, sometimes over 3,000 warning tickets to 900 actual tickets. So that education piece at the beginning of this ordinance is effective, we believe. We've also, the city uses every communication piece that we have at our disposal to let residents know. But sometimes, yes, they need that reminder that they're on the wrong side of the street, or there is no parking from 2 to 6 a.m. Just a few points I guess I would like to drive home. And last night, or this morning is a perfect example where we got some snow, and it doesn't matter if it's a blizzard. People are gonna drive to 169 and 83, and we're going to have accidents. We will never be able to tag and tow faster than they can plow. It's just not going to be possible. We're gonna be too busy running after accidents. This morning between 2 and 6, I think we had, even within an hour and a half, we had 5 different accidents, some of them multiple car pileups. So this morning was another example of that's where our resources are gonna be, and it may be a while before we can even get back to the snowbirds.
Other questions? Councilor Heitzman?
Chief, is this, the map that's up on the monitor, is that on our website where the citizens can see it and easily if they got questions regarding
It
it?
is, yes.
And then another one was, now when you go from one area to the other, how good is it signed where people can drive into the area and they know, well, this area I gotta park? I don't know where the one starts and one stops.
I don't have all the signs memorized where they are. I know we do have different signs on, I believe, the major roads. Maybe Bruce can speak to that. The major entry points to the city. The snow emergency routes are obviously signed as such. Again, that speaks a lot to why we take the time that we do and the resources that we do. We try and hit every street in the month of November. We can't hit every street, every block, every night, but that's another reason, again, that we definitely put the warning tickets out there.
Just to add to that, Counselor Heitzman, talking with Mike Hollander, we are looking, some of our signs need to be upgraded and with some more language, so we are looking at that and doing that. And we should have that in place here in the next couple of weeks.
Good. Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, Chief, does our warning tickets actually have a copy of this map and some kind of instruction that maybe we could put out with the warning tickets?
Counselor Lehman, it does not have a picture of the map, but it does explain what the violation is. We have different tickets, different warning tickets, and different colors depending on if you're at 2 to 6, if you're on a snow emergency, or if you're odd even calendar.
Is it non-economical to put out the various differences, places of the city in one package to go to any ticket or warning ticket?
We could look at the cost in the future of printing that map. Our tickets aren't big. They're a bright color to get people's attention, spell out exactly what they did,
Okay.
hoping that people will go back to our website to check the map. But it does outline specifically the street they're on, what the violation is.
Does it have the website on that warning ticket?
I'm not sure right now, off the
Alright.
top of my head,
Well,
if
maybe
it
we
does
could
or
put
not.
that on there, that'll steer them to that.
I believe it is on there.
Okay.
No, I just, Tuesday morning, saw a whole bunch of cars with them out, and so I went and checked it out to see what it was, and they were out in Dean Lakes. There were dozens of cars that had them. Any other questions from council? My question on it, what would happen if we didn't have the all winter long from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. or whatever it is, if we didn't have that entire winter restriction and just told people to be out of the way when it snows? What would happen then? Would we have, are people smart enough to figure out when it's snowing and to get off the street, or is that just not even a possibility?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I believe that you would have so many people violating that we wouldn't be able to keep up. And again, after 2 a.m., that's when our staffing minimums are at their bare bone. That's 3 officers. On the weekends, it's more, but we're just not going to be able to keep up. I think the education component of it, trusting that people are going, as opposed to trusting that people will check the weather before they go to bed. I support Bruce's position that sticking with what we have right now. It's not perfect. That's why I think you see a lot of different ordinances in different cities. Nobody's found that magic bullet yet. But I do believe it's working here in Shakopee.
Okay. Did you have something to say, Mr. Meehan?
Just to reiterate the education component of that, the other practical part of going with the snow emergency is one notification. Certainly Minneapolis and St. Paul have that, but they also have major media at their disposal with the advances in electronics. You know, you're able to tweet and get that information out, but it's certainly not going to get to everyone. The other part of it is that when we do have to tow, as opposed to the larger cities that have squadrons of tow trucks available, we've got 2 available, and by the time you got through hauling any number, we'd be well into the next day, and people wouldn't be getting their streets plowed curb to curb as we try to get them done,
Do we need a motion on this?
unless there's
No,
a change.
Unless, is there anything that we would like to see changed with it?
Are you positive the website is on the warning?
We will look
I'm-
at that.
99% positive, yeah.
Check on the 1%. Make
Okay.
sure she's on there, and if they don't have access to the internet, maybe some city hall contact or something.
All right, yeah, I would love to change it to only when it snows that people can't park on the street, but if it's not going to work, then that, yeah?
I do want to, for anybody that's watching, I do want to stress this too. If you do have a family event, we do have, please call, let us know. We have always been granting the parking variances. So come Thanksgiving, if you're going to have family over and that you're not going to be able to fit everybody in your driveway and so forth, it's nice to know that, and we do put that out in patrol so they know that a variance has been, you know, for different circumstances, funerals, et cetera, we get them all, but people do call and ask for variances. I encourage them to do so if they're gonna have excess people there, we do grant those.
Great, thank you. All right, if there's nothing else from council, we'll move on to the next item. Thank you for going through that with us, I appreciate it. 10E1, 2014 budget. Ms. Linehan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. After a long night last night, we're into another topic of the 2014 budget. What we have provided to you in your agenda packets is continuing follow-up of the status of the 2014 budget. We are going to discuss 4 separate areas that we are asking your direction and input on tonight. The first being the debt service levies, the second being the economic development fund transfer, the third discussing the capital improvement fund and the request for fund transfer, and some personnel discussions specific to various departments. What we are asking for tonight from the council is direction as to finalizing the information that we'll be bringing to the council on December 3rd, as we'll have a public meeting on the budget discussing both the budget, the tax levy, and the topic that is new to this year's budget program, the impact of the sales tax exemption. That's still a work in progress, so by December 3rd that will be crafted, but we're not going to discuss that tonight unless you have an incredible desire to do that. First discussion this evening will be on the issues related to debt service. As council recalls, get my glasses on. Okay, I know this is your favorite sheet, so it's so easy to see. Historically, the city has had a number of debt service levies. What is before you this evening is the city has, in the 2013 levies, allowed for the one debt service levy specific to the fire department building. What staff has discussed with council is the addition of another levy in the 2014 budget for the 2006A levy, and we are requesting a debt service levy of $343,215. Now, the 2013 budget and levy did not allow for any of this. If I can refresh the council, when we discussed the question of debt service levies last year, there was concern that we were still experiencing market value declines. It was recommended by council that we hold off on this, address it when we see market value growth. That has currently been experienced. For 2014, we're looking at an increase of roughly 4.8%. Before you tonight, staff is introducing the increase of the fire department referendum levy from $150,000 to $175,000. The 2006A levy, which is currently established at 0, to $343,215. Is there any questions council has on these debt levies? We are not levying at this point for any of the other debt. We are still utilizing prepayments of assessments, cash position, but as we've discussed prior, we feel it is important to bring debt service levies to council for discussion.
Which column is the debt levy, or the fire station?
We're gonna go here to 2004B. The actual amount of the debt service payment is about $253,000. We've gone from 120 to 150. Now we're requesting 175. We are currently not yet at the full levy. We're trying to do this incrementally. Now realize we do have a 3% property tax levy limit imposed by the legislature for 2014. Debt service levies are above that limit.
Councilor Lehman.
So, the combined total is 519.
518,959, that's correct.
Okay, I'm gonna round.
Right.
Okay. So, $519,000, which normally is paid out of the general levy.
It is normally paid out of the cash position in these debt service funds, or if there is underspend, overspend, that type of a reserve, we can tap into those funds, and previously collected special assessments.
Okay, in the past, we didn't levy them separately.
Historically, the city has not issued debt and then followed it up with a specific levy.
Okay, so when we're moving them over to their own individual levy,
Correct.
does that not free up what typically in the past would have been used to pay them with?
It does, but what we have done is tightened up the budgeting so that the available amount of overspend or underspend simply is not the level it was in prior years.
But didn't I read that the over or underspend is gonna be used for the capital improvement fund?
Correct. That is from the prior year. And I'm saying in the future, you are going to have less of that available. There will not be the variations because we have really worked to tighten up the budget actuals to budget estimates. So there will be less of that.
Councilor Clay.
Yeah, in previous years, except this last one,
Correct.
I believe we, as the council, working through our budget packets and, through the summer, we always had a line item specifically labeled as underspend.
Correct.
So every department would budget a certain amount of money that they wanted, increase it, and then throw in the underspend. It seemed to me, I'm sure that wasn't actually the case.
It really wasn't the case. There's always so much variations
Yeah.
because of things, as you're aware of. Police department's a classic example. When they have situations where personnel leave or change, they have large periods of time because the recruitment process is very time consuming, that you may have periods of payroll that are not paid. That results in an underspend.
Yeah, and my biggest problem with it was always that, if I'm budgeting a certain amount of money for a department, I don't like the idea of then saying, this is your budget, that we've approved, but we're expecting you not to spend 10% of
Correct.
it.
Correct. I think that's a difficult practice to impose on people. It's not consistent, and it's not what I would call a best practice.
Yeah.
Further questions?
And tonight, council is asking, as we proceed and develop the resolution for the property tax levy on December 3rd, is this an appropriate amount that you are comfortable with bringing forward as two specific debt service levies? We will proceed based as council directs.
Councilor
You
Whiting?
know, this is money we've spent, and how we've handled it in the past is one way. I think we need to be transparent by showing that, you know, we have spent this money. It's out there, it's debt we've accrued. We need to pass that along rather than try and juggle the funds in the budget in other places. So we did a little bit last year. We increased it here this year on the 2004B by a little bit, and then we're adding one more. I think that's the best practice to move forward with.
Okay.
Can I ask
That's what, yes,
a question on, you said that they gets paid in the past through prepayment of assessments.
correct.
So does that mean that people who pay on future assessments are being used to pay past bond? Is that how that is working, or is that?
Or at the time of sales, oftentimes people will come in and pay off a full assessment. In a period when you had a lot of real estate transactions, it's interesting what can happen to the cash flow estimates. They can change rapidly from when you issued the debt and made determinations of how much would be collected annually versus when you have a lot of sales going on in the community and a lot of payoffs on assessments. It can really impact how your cash in these funds flows in.
So that payment of the assessment isn't necessarily used to pay off that specific bond
Yes.
line item?
Each
Or
payment that the city receives from Scott County in the tax settlements and the special assessment settlements is defined specifically for each assessment roll by each debt levy.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So as council, are we comfortable with increasing how much we're paying, repaying our debts? Would you like this in the form of a motion? I assume that would be best.
Direction from the council would be helpful, and then that way, if there are concerns as to, okay, is the 300 and some thousand that we've talked about here, is this something you're agreeable with to bring forward in the levy, or is there an amount someone else wishes to offer up, or what the consensus of the council would be, would be helpful.
Right, and this is not final, just so
No,
everyone knows. This
this
is
is
just direction
discussion.
as to where we're going. So, could someone give that in the form of a motion? Councilor Whiting?
I'll attempt one. I'll move to direct staff to consider the certification of debt service levies 2006A and 2004B during the December levy and budget.
Do we have a second?
Second that.
Second by Councilor Heitzman. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Second item.
Thank you. Economic development. For those of you who've been here in the last several years' discussion, this is a topic that has grown significantly from where the Economic Development Authority Fund was at to where we're looking at for 2014. The specific areas that we'll talk about tonight is we are requesting a fund transfer from the general fund, which is actually a portion of that general fund property tax levy, to the EDA in the amount of $330,000. That $330,000 will be used in the following manner. We will be dealing with the facade, originally facade loan program, which is now the improvement loan program. We're looking at funding that to approximately $150,000. In the EDA, we also provide funding so that as staff and the community groups and interested commercial, industrial individuals approach the city, we have funding to deal with the legal issues, the financial analysis, the other professional services needed, and we're requesting approximately $80,000 for operational funds so that the city can continue their work in the Economic Development Authority area. The final composition of what this $330,000 consists of is the staff time. And that is, as you're aware, in 2013, we hired a position for a full-time person in the EDA. There's also staff time that is put in by Mr. McNeil, city administrator, myself, and other staff members. And the $330,000 transfer is what is allowed for covering that. There are some areas of discussion that are really not funded in this EDA transfer, and we wanted to bring this to your attention. There's a Main Street program that has recently been discussed. At the current time, staff is working with the chamber to determine, can we hire a position that would be hired in conjunction with city funding, hired by the chamber to fill a full-time position to work with the Main Street program. This is not a position that would be filled if there wouldn't be a partner to help us fund this position. There also is not money specifically designated in the 2014 budget for this. It would have to come from the fund reserves of this EDA fund. But because at this time we do not have a firm commitment, we did not want to bring this forward into that budget. So if there's any question about the Main Street program, that is not in this budget. And it is also a position, if I'm correct on this, Mr. McNeil, would be hired by the chamber, full-time position, partially funded by the city. The other area that we really have not put funding directly into the budget for is property acquisition. I know there has been discussion as we've talked about projects, whether it's the 101 corridor, of would there be a need for property acquisition? Because again, we do not have anything specific, we do not have some kind of a program, we have no policies in place. At this time, we do not have money in the budget for property acquisition. That would require, I think, a specific action of the council. The other area is loans that we would be potentially issuing, whether there would be a new program, whether there would be some type of specific community request. Those are areas a little bit outside right now of what we're funding, because as you recall, it wasn't all that many years ago that there really was virtually no funding going into the EDA. This is a program in its infancy. It's really building. And at this point, we've gone from a fund transfer on the current year, 2013, to $300,000 to the requested fund transfer of $330,000. And we would like verification from the council that this is an appropriate transfer that they want us to bring forward. Any questions?
Questions? Anybody?
I'll take a stab.
Councilor
at it.
Whiting.
Last year, we had the facade loan program, and it had $150,000 in the fund. Now we've changed it a little bit to the commercial loan program, commercial exterior improvement program, and we're gonna add another $150,000
Correct.
to that. So this loan program will have $300,000. Last year, nobody used it.
Correct.
Now, to me, adding more to it, that would be an area where we could probably take a look at. I would rather see the $150,000 left alone from last year and take the $150,000 that we planned on putting in there this year and either save that money or put it into a different portion of EDA work like we were talking about here with property acquisition and some of the other projects that we could use it on. Otherwise, if no one's gonna use it, we just keep piling it in there.
Just as a general overview, the EDA fund is a special revenue fund. It's separate from the general fund. So it's a standalone fund, has very specific uses. It can have designations of the cash in there known as designations of fund balance. We can designate based on council action if they would wish to reserve funds for future projects. Based on council action as we get closer to year end, we can bring those actions back to you. It isn't like this is going into the general fund, which has a significant fund balance. It's a smaller fund. And just as a reminder, this is also the fund that later this year or early 2014 will also fund the Emerson Rosemount request. That is part of the business incentives that we've worked through with them. So there's definitely a use of the fund balance in that fund.
Councilor Lehman.
The EDA specific levy amount is how much?
For 2014, we're requesting 330,000 from the general fund. It's a transfer. We do not have a specific EDA levy.
Well, we
It's a
used to have that.
transfer. That was several years ago. This is an issue that Attorney Jim Thompson and I spoke about when I initially started here. We do not have the establishment of a designated standalone EDA levy. There's certain statute requirements. And we were, when we were speaking with the Office of the State Auditor, we were determined that the most appropriate way to deal with the EDA is take a general fund transfer to the EDA, because we don't really have the criteria established for a specific EDA levy.
Well, I'm confused because for years we've been adopting a separate EDA levy amount. And it was 80 and 80 and 80, and then I think it went up to 150 or
Right.
something.
But that was a specific levy. Then there was a year where we said, listen, it's really more appropriate to be shown as a transfer from the general fund.
So we're not gonna do the EDA levy
Don't do a
itself.
standalone EDA levy.
And instead of doing the 150, you're requesting 330.
We did 300,000 in 2013.
Prior to that,
Transfer from the general fund.
right, prior to
Making
that,
it- Prior to that, there was a year where there was zero levy, and then prior to that, there was $80,000 levy.
okay, so it went from 80 to 0 to 330.
Will somebody kick her out?
Talk amongst yourself. You know, nothing says happy EDA like a little
There you go.
interruption.
Exactly. Okay.
Where were we?
So I have a question on the $150,000 for
Yes.
the facade loan program. Do we specifically have to designate as facade as the new commercial exterior improvement program? Do we have to have that?
You don't
as
need a
that?
special designation, but if, as a council, you want to ensure that you have a council-specific action that says, we would like to make sure these funds are designated for this specific purpose, you can do that.
So could we take that $150,000 and designate it as commercial exterior improvement program or low interest program, something like that? So make a bigger use to cover
Oh, sure, you can
Counselor
broaden the
Whiting's.
use on that, and that's why this is, having a special standalone, special revenue fund. It's a good system to allow us to track these things, and we can truly track how the council wants to work with us.
Got it. Any,
Good name for that fund.
we'll call it the Counselor Whiting Fund? Is that what you
All
meant?
right, we'll do it that.
Probably not a good idea.
Probably not.
All right, other questions about this? All right, can we have a motion, or is there any changes that people would like to see? Where are we at? Counselor Clay.
Well, actually, I do have one quick question, if I may, for Julie. So if we were just transferring money from the general fund to the EDA
Special revenue.
halfway through next year, if something changes the council's mind,
Right,
they could lower that or,
not a problem.
or
We can do
take
a
more
budget
money out of the general
adjustment.
fund.
Right, you can do budget adjustments as long as it's an action of the council. We can deal with this, bring it forward, make it formal. Yeah, if there would be something, let's say you had something that significantly changed how you want to deal with the E EDA.
It actually wouldn't even really be a budget impact kind of an item, because we're just transferring money from
Correct.
the fund balance to a different fund balance.
Correct.
Okay.
Unless you increased your allocation. So if you did a 330 transfer and decided that you wanted to spend 2 million, that would have a negative impact.
Well, it would change our balance sheet, but it wouldn't change our spending budget.
Across the board, it's pretty much neutral.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, anyone want to put this one in the form of a motion? Counselor Clay, you seem like you were well on your way.
Move to direct staff to include in the budget the transfer from the general fund to the EDA fund of $330,000 for the 2014 budget.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Whiting. Any discussion on this item? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously.
Okay. Third topic to discuss this evening is the capital improvement plan. 2013, again, kind of a banner year for new programs, was the first year that the city made a designated transfer from the general fund to the capital improvement fund to fund and significantly grow the CIP fund. It's a standalone capital project fund, a little different than a special revenue fund, because it funds specifically the infrastructure of your city. $500,000 was approved and will be transferred in 2013. The request for 2014 is for a transfer of $750,000. The request for 2015 will be $1 million. We're taking these up incrementally as Mr. Loney and I have worked through the issues and concerns of this capital fund. It's very critical with the level and nature of the improvements the city is going to be dealing with in the next 5 years, that there be identified and consistent funding flow. Other resources do come into the CIP fund, including state aid, contributions from SPUC when they are working on projects. There's cost sharing with the county, there's MnDOT, there's any number of items. There's also assessments, developer costs, a lot of different funding mechanisms. But to remind you, the city of Shakopee assesses 30% of reconstruction projects. The remainder, the 70%, is typically carried through the city costs. That requires a fairly significant amount of money to be contributed through the city through a designated fund, hence the need to transfer these funds. We realize this is a significant amount of money, and it is a change because it has not been how that fund has been basically flowed into in the past. So at this point, what we're looking at is a couple issues. In 2014, Mr. Loney has put together a reconstruction plan of $3.93 million. He's also prepared options that would level out the reconstruct dollars a little bit more similar for 2014, 2015, Bruce, the 2 years of the options. I'm going to let Mr. Loney talk about that as far as the ability to manage the projects, but the consistency of the dollars flowing into there, if you'd like to give an update.
Thank you, Julie. And what Julie is referring to is with the initial CIP recon, we had petitions in from 2 areas. One of the areas that is in this area, Apgar, Scott Street, has been in the CIP for a number of years, and this is their turn. We've had some issues with some sewer services along Market Street, and Bob Schmidt, who's in the audience, has helped organize a petition, and he has been one big trooper of working with him. He's a very good citizen and looking out for his neighbors. These projects, again, I mean, this year's project was less than this one, and it was very time-consuming and difficult to provide good customer service, managing the project. It takes up a lot of staff time. And if they get too big, we're not gonna be able to really do a good job. That's the main concern. So we are looking at, and in the one that we had in 2015, if I put it on the board, was a lot smaller, only 1.39 million. So our recommendation, and especially we started the feasibility study, and we have gone into looking at this in more detail, that, whoops, I got the wrong one. I have another 2014 right here. If we take out Market Street, the project drops from 3.9, about $1 million. So, and if we add Market Street into 2015, that one goes up $1 million. But they're pretty balanced projects. They're pretty good size. They're about a little bit less than this year's project, but they're still good sized projects. They're not small projects. As Julie was mentioning, we'd like to balance this out more, especially as we got into the feasibility study and seeing the reaction. The downside, we do have some residents that are experiencing, I put this on the screen here, and I worked with Mr. Schmidt on this. When he went and got petitions here, the properties in red are experiencing sewer problems. They said their sewer's slow, and we just cleaned our main line twice now this past summer and just recently, and there's tree roots. That's the major issue that's out there. And we've cleaned that line. Our line is very good shape, clean. We'll probably have to go out there next year and do more clean of tree roots if we have to. But we can make our main line last till 2015. No, I'm sure of that. The issue for the petition was people in their service lines. One of the things I've been working on is a proposal with one of our televising companies in Shakopee here and we have a person that they know of can get in there and clean the lines. They have a special root cutter that can get in there without damaging the lines. What I'd like to do is, with council permission, offer, they would pay for the cleaning of the line up to a certain dollar amount. We would then pay for the televising, because we want to know what kind of condition, where the Orangeburg is, where it isn't, what shape is the connection to our main line. Then we would be able to tell people, especially those in trouble or somewhat suspect in trouble, what is your condition of your line? We'd be able to tell them what you may have to do, and we work with these people how to make it work until we get to you. Some of the people, if they have Orangeburg for their house, for instance, which Mr. Schmidt did, we could tell them then, you have Orangeburg, it's not in very good shape. Maybe in 2014, you do a project where you replace your sewer pipe from your house to the right-of-way line. Then in 2015, we'll come back and connect it up. So there's some things that we can do to help that neighborhood get to 2015 without hopefully too many expenses. So that's some of the things we're looking at with council, I guess, permission or approval. We'd like to make that switch in CIP.
Councilor Whiting?
Mr. Loney, we talked a little bit about this. This is a great idea. I don't know if Mr. Schmidt came up with it or not, but the one question I do have is, we had talked a little bit about Orangeburg and that type of piping. When you come through and cut the tree roots, Orangeburg is pretty delicate. Is that gonna cause any extra damage? You're gonna need to cut the tree roots
Yeah.
first before you televise it.
Well, I did talk to our televising guy who works with this person that does this for a living. He actually has a special cutter that he's done this and can do this without damaging the pipe. That's what he said. So, I'll have to interview him and talk to him some more. But that is a concern. Once you go in there, you may damage the pipe. He said he has done this. I told him the situation, and he feels he can do this.
So if some of these if after they're televised and you find some major damage, we can go in and piecemeal fix some of these if we have to, or if it's the residents' issue, they can
Yeah.
fix their own.
For instance, if we find a piece of pipe that's bad and it's on their property beyond the right-of-way line, they would have to fix that at their cost anyway. We only go up to the right-of-way line with the sewer when we do a recon. So that way we'd be able to tell them, look, you better pay attention, you might wanna get a project. What we did this past year, the people in Atwood, they all got together, they had a group rate. They had contacted a contractor and they all got a really good price to replace their service line from their house to the property line. So there's things that people, if we can find out do they have a problem? Maybe they don't. Maybe they just need a cleaning and they're fine, or maybe they do have a problem. We can give them that information. They can make some decisions then in 2014 to make their service work until we get to them in 2015.
Did you have an idea of the cost on televising and cutting the tree
Yes.
roots? And-
I think our rate, this would be a group rate, we're gonna get $150 to televise. And the estimate cost would be about $185 to clean. Part of me would to say we'd max out their cost, keep everybody the same. We said, here's your maximum cost, we'll pick up the rest, because we wanna know the condition of your service. I can't go in the main and shoot up a service pipe like I wanted to, because the line needs to be cleaned. We can't clean the line unless we get inside the house and clean it that way. So that's the reason for this different proposal.
Councilor Lehman?
Bruce, I like the idea of trying to make the two projects more in balance of cost. Is there any possibility of just flipping the two projects? Do 2015s and 2014 and 2014s and 2015?
I think to be fair and not have a neighborhood battle, this neighborhood was in first, the one over here. They've been in for a number of years. They've been waiting. So when you start switching, you gotta be careful. You're gonna make one side really mad. They've been in they've been in our CIP, they've been in the books. Market Street came in, they were actually about 3 or 4 years away. Now we've moved them up 3 or 4 years. So I think what we're proposing is the most balanced and fair way of looking at things.
So they both have sewer problems?
Yeah, there's sewer problems in the other area too.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right,
Okay, thank you.
thank you, Mr. Loney.
Take your time, Bruce, it's okay. In your packet also, for your review, and I guess your general information, is the full capital plan that engineering has created 2014 through 2018. That gives you a really good comprehensive overview, but as Mr. Loney and I have discussed, really anything much past 2014, 2015 is estimate only, and it's difficult. I know people want to have those details a little bit more refined, not always possible. The things that come in the follow-up years past 2015 are the policy topics that Bruce brought forward to you relating to alleys and relating to the, when we had talked to you earlier this summer about attaching some funding specific to the stormwater for concrete alleys and dealing with some of the issues. I know other topics that have recently surfaced are like the downtown parking lots, things of that degree. Those factors will come into play a little bit closer as we get to those years, but these are policies that he's moving ahead on based with your approval earlier this year, and then you'll see those in future CIPs. But we wanted a confirmation this evening that the transfer from the general fund to the CIP funds is appropriate, that council is interested in bringing those forward.
That's Whiting?
We've talked about this a little bit, and nobody likes to have to spend extra money on these roads, but we've talked about the bubble too, that we're gonna be having more and more road issues and sewer issues, and the only way to stay on top of that is to get busy and start working on some of these projects and start funding some of them now. So I think that we have to move forward with that.
Right.
Any other questions?
I'm good. I'm good
Councilor
with it.
Lehman?
Good with it. 750 and 1 million.
Do you want to put that in the form of a motion?
Sure. Make a motion to follow the 750 for 2014 and 1 million for 2015 to the CIP for road and infrastructure improvements.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Heitzman.
I made that one up. How'd I do?
You did great.
You gotta say that you transferred it from the general to the.
I think I got that.
We did.
We're
Fine.
good enough. All right, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passed unanimously.
Okay, in the area of personnel, there's a couple of topics. I think the first one I'm gonna start with, if you don't mind, is related to the Fire Relief Association. At recent fire relief meetings that we have monthly, there's been discussion for some time now on increasing the amount of the pension that is provided on a per-year basis to the fire relief members. Currently, the city provides a pension of $7,500 per year of service to the vested members. There was some rather lengthy discussion that's gone on for a number of meetings, and before you tonight, and I will have this available at the December 3rd meeting, will be a request from the organization for an increase of $100 for the 2014 year, another $100 for 2015, another $100 for 2016, to bring the annual contribution amount from $7,500 to $7,600 in 2014, $7,700 in 2015, $7,800 in 2016. This is the first increase in quite some time, 2005, and it is in perfect timing with another issue that occurred at the state during the legislative session, and that was the city received approximately $50,000 from the state of Minnesota in supplemental aid. That unexpected income has provided the funding so that the actual, what they call funded liability of this retirement group is not impacted by this request. You're not gonna see a large change from your funded liability being at 90-some% to going down to 70-some%. This type of an increase, you will barely see even a change. Unfunded pension amounts can change dramatically if you have a number of members retire, or if you have a hire of a lot of new members that come in and have a fairly significant unfunded pension. But we will be asking council to approve this request. We'd like an informal action on December 3rd, and we wanted to bring this by you early and get your thoughts on this, or see if you had any questions.
Councilor Lehman?
Did they change the years of service for eligibility?
No,
So what sparks the increase? Just a request?
just the number of years since they felt they've received an increase.
Okay.
Councilor Whiting?
How does this stack up with other pension funds in the surrounding cities?
There's various kinds of pension funds that fire reliefs. They can have defined benefit, defined pension, defined, any number. In this grouping, Shakopee is one of the highest in the state.
Highest in the state.
At the $7,500 level?
$7,500 level. There's a couple above us, but it's interesting because if you really get in and look city to city, the determination and the structure and the pension process is very unique city by city.
If I may continue, so maybe it's 10 years to be vested, 15 years, different things like that, or?
Well, actually, it's the type of funding, is it defined benefit, is it defined contribution, is it lump, there's just retirement funds pretty much need a PhD, I've come to the conclusion on. And they have terminology that unless you read all of the investment agreements and all of the association agreements and all of the bylaws and all of the OSA standards, they are very complex.
Councilor Clay?
So I'm a fireman for 20 years. I retire with a big smile on my face. And I get then $7,000
$500, $7,000
per
right,
times 20
right.
for each year.
Well,
And it,
it's calculated on what the amount was for those years.
oh, yeah,
It
running
isn't
total,
like in
I gotcha.
2015, everybody's gonna get this 77 for every year of service, okay? It kicks in based on that year,
Just for that year
yeah,
forward.
and, yeah.
So then you've got this chunk of change
Mm-hmm.
that they then,
Hmm.
that I then need to.
Theirs kicks in and retro kicks back. Their bylaws do?
Sorry to interrupt, Mayor
Okay,
and council
we're having a
members.
discussion here on this one.
I believe it does. So the year you retire, you take the amount in effect in that year and you multiply it by your years of service.
Okay.
So if you choose to increase it to $7,600 in 2014, someone that retires in 2014 would get, and assuming they had the full 20 years in, they would get $7,600
For
times
the 20 years.
20 years.
Okay, I stand corrected because when you do the reports for the state auditor, they use a different calculation.
Which they then have to make a decision whether to take the cash and
And they can
taxes on
defer.
it and run, or
It's a lump sum payout. We only offer a
they
lump sum
can roll it
payout.
into an IRA or an investment.
Yes, but they have to take it all at once.
I got you.
But they can defer.
They can defer, all right.
They can leave it in the fund and collect interest on it just in the fund, but when they take it, it all comes out. They can't get like a monthly payment out of the fund. They get it all as a lump sum.
Hence lump sum pension distribution.
And you can roll that over to another retirement fund that you have, or create a new one without experiencing any taxes on it until you,
Depending on what type of fund they would roll it into,
yeah, okay.
okay? So that will come forward to you as part of the budget process in December.
So with, oh, sorry, Council Lehman.
Can we get a list of what the surrounding comparable cities are doing for
Sure.
their?
We actually have one of those from the Office of the State Auditor. The problem is I wish I could give you something that was 2013. The most current list they have right now is 2011. So
Something's
it's-
better than nothing. 'cause
Yes,
Right now I have
and
nothing.
I've been waiting to see if I could get some of the details in for 2012. As of this week, they still did not have 2012, but I can get you 2011.
And then the other piece of information would be, a breakdown of when we expect retirements hitting 20, 25 years of service.
We had a discussion on that at a recent Fire Relief Association meeting. Extremely difficult. And I think you're aware of that, Chief Coleman. We've even talked about that to determine, can we get estimated dates? It's just not, historically, let's just say we don't have that.
Okay, let me try this question if I, Mayor.
Please.
How many firefighters currently have 20 years of service in?
We got about five or six?
It's 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Okay, and how many with 10 years of service?
I would say 15.
If we could just get them numbers together.
Probably
We can certainly get you
15.
that.
Yeah,
I
we know
get your
their
numbers.
dates, yeah.
Okay,
That was it?
Yep.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Council
We
Witten.
can pull that in for you, Mr. Lehman.
You mentioned the $50,000 and that it wasn't gonna affect, is there a long-term effect to this pension fund?
Unfunded pension liabilities are always a concern. The city of Shakopee is sitting in a very good position as far as funded pension. This is a healthy fund, it's earning good investments. They've recently turned over and changed the investment process. It's very well managed.
Is this resolution that's in front of us right now, is this the resolution that's recommended by staff, or is this the resolution coming from the Relief Association?
Staff put this together, routed it through the Relief Association, said, does this look exactly like we talked about at our Relief Association meetings? Everybody said looks fine, and then that's why we thought we'd introduce this topic and bring it forward so you're aware of it. It would be part of the 2014 budget.
So is this the recommendation from staff, or
Yes.
this is, okay.
Yes.
Chief? Come on, you know you wanna get on this
Come
too.
on, you're in here.
I don't know if I want to get in on this. This was the recommendation from the Relief Board and their members for the $100 for each year. So we were just bringing it forward to you.
So this is not necessarily what staff believes is the best thing to do, or I'm confused? This is
Oh,
where
yes.
we wanna go? Okay,
Yeah, this is where we want to go.
okay. Council Lehman?
So is the real number, if it's $100 per year in 2014, do we then take, I don't know, let's say we've got 40 firefighters with 10 have 5 years, 10 have 20 years, and then you take, okay, there's all these years of liability times 100 for this dollar amount?
Explain the calculation. It's a whole series of reports.
It's a
Let's-
lot, it's a lot of reports.
Let's try
Anyway.
it really clean. It's a fire department of 5 people.
Well, there, it'll be easier this way. If we did I think this year, your city, I think you need to look at your city contribution. Your city contribution this year, I think, was $124,000. If we add $100, if the relief would've added the $100, or the council would've added it this year, it's like $2,000 difference it would've added to your contribution to the relief. The relief fund right now is 96% vested, which is unheard of in the state. That's, we're well vested. We have the money sitting there. And as that money is collected and people are sitting on deferred, we are collecting interest on their money. We're also paying interest out, but we're collecting more interest than we're paying out. So the fund keeps growing, and we're actually making money. So this isn't going to be now, if the market goes way south on us, I can't control that, but I don't see that happening where we're sitting right now and how our funds have to be invested. They're pretty safe.
Councilor Clay?
What determines the contribution from the city each year?
The state does that through, it's a calculation, you put in everybody's years of service, and it,
So as a city, we can't say you guys have a fund that's too healthy, we'll skip a couple years?
no, the state determines what your city contribution is.
I kind of assumed it was gonna be another issue that we have no control over, but yeah. thanks.
Correct.
Mayor, my only question, I guess, now is, besides the information I already asked for, was, this looks like they're asking for $100 a year, which is no brainer, that's easy, $300 over 3 years, but that's not in fact what we're talking about.
Correct.
We're talking about $2,000 a year?
You're basically, if you wanna break it down into simple terms, you're asking, each guy is asking, it would be each firefighter is getting an extra $100 a year. So if we have 46 firefighters, it'd be $4,600, but because it's prorated out, you don't pay that $4,600 in that year because of the investment, because of,
I'll wait for more information.
they're not vested until they hit 20.
Yeah, I'll wait for some more information.
You're not vested at all until you hit 20 years?
You're vested at 40% at 5 years.
Okay.
And then it gradually goes up from there. But you can't collect your money till you're 50, so if you retired at 10 years and you were only 35 years old, that money sits in there and we collect the interest on it till you turn 50. At 50, you can take your money. But you need to roll it over. If you do not roll it over and take the cash, the government takes, I believe, 47% of it. It's rough. It's right around in there.
That's the drawback of having a healthy fund, isn't it?
Yep.
All right, so with this, this is not a huge budget impact item. Can we hold off on this until we
yeah.
get
Yeah, I just wanted to.
bigger discussion with
Excuse me.
data?
I just wanted to bring this to your attention because it's been several years that you've had a discussion on an increase in the pension, and this was the year that they were in agreement would be a good time to bring this forward.
Perfect.
Okay? Any other questions on that? Okay. And then the next issue that Mr. McNeil will discuss with you is, okay, I'll let him use his, is related to the changes to existing positions followed by the requested new positions.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I do want to go by the information that was in your handout, but we're gonna go in a little different order because this will allow me to do some grouping that makes a little more sense, I believe. But generally speaking, what you have in front of you is a request for 12 different positions or actions on this. Several of them involve a reclassification or promotion. We also are looking to add 4 full-time positions and a couple of intern positions with that. About half of the personnel requests are related to a desire by the Public Works Director to look at the engineering and public works services. Bruce talked about this in 2013 and did not make any requests at that time. However, he said he'd bring it back in 2014, and lo and behold, here they are. So there's a couple of factors driving this. First, we've got an expansion of work projects. Even if we don't do anything further, we've got enough economic development activity over the past year and contracts underway that we're going to have to ramp up for that sort of thing. If we don't do that, then we're probably going to be looking at hiring additional consulting engineer work. The couple of positions that we have there, one is a graduate engineer position, which is slated to or proposed to be starting on May 1st. That's about $51,500. There's also an existing engineering technician 4, which we would go up a pay grade to a project coordinator that will reflect the additional responsibilities that that particular position would take on. The other part of the factor driving this is just the growth that we've had in the community, and we're looking at public works for that. It's been 2006 since we last added maintenance operators, but since that time, and certainly now, it's gearing up more. We've added parks and we've added streets. So we've got 2 positions there, both maintenance operators starting May 1st again for streets and in parks. The last grouping in Public Works is to reflect the fact that we've got a number of senior level employees who have indicated that sometime in the foreseeable future, they're looking at retirement. What we would do would be to recommend the promotion of 2 temporary leads to, at this point, we're calling them foremen. We don't have a gender-neutral term for that yet, but in any case, a supervisory level position, and then a couple of the temporary leads, which we have currently in the existing organization, we would reclassify to permanent leads, and that would reflect more responsibility on their part and therefore some extra pay with that. There's a couple of other, or there's some other positions that are being proposed for you tonight. First would be a facilities worker, and right now that's shown in administration. We'd be proposing to add that March 1st. This actually is an idea that was brought forward to us by the Parks, Rec, and Natural Resources Director. Jamie has a concern over the level of maintenance that's been done at the community center, and her idea was that we bring in a position that would be a bit more skilled than the maintenance workers that we have now, that might be able to do some of the rudimentary sorts of HVAC things that we would perhaps have to contract out. Otherwise, this position would also be somebody who would be able to take a look at more of the strategic long-range maintenance sorts of needs for that building. As we looked at it, we thought, well, you know, it makes sense there. Why wouldn't it make sense in the other city facilities that we have? The net result is that we'd be adding an additional position to the 3 that we currently have, and so some of those other positions would be freed up to do some additional work at the community center and provide a better level of maintenance all the way through the system. So that's one that is being recommended there as well. An intern position that we'd like to have you look at would be in administration, and we're calling it a management intern. As we've gotten busier over the past year, certainly there are several things that haven't gotten done. We think adding an intern would be a cost-effective way of doing this. Right now, we've got a volunteer and unpaid intern that's working part-time. That individual is working on such things as helping with the acquisition of the garbage carts. She's doing some EDAC surveys and some writing of pamphlets, is doing some surveying of costs related to development. I can also see them stepping in. We're probably behind where we'd like to be on a pay study right now. That position could help with that. With a volunteer position, we can't guarantee how long this individual is going to be there. The alternative, and it was asked of me, why don't we go with a full-time position? It's basically, it's a cost compromise. What we've got right now factored for you is an intern position, which if it starts May 1st, would be about $34,500. If we're going to add a first level or an entry level full-time position, that would have to be at a minimum of a grade 6, which is the lowest level that we have for somebody with a bachelor's degree. That would be also then subject to such things as benefits, health insurance, that sort of thing, which an intern does not get. That nearly doubles the cost to be about $70,000 for that. So therefore, while the internship position is somebody that we couldn't guarantee is going to be here, you know, a long period of time, we think that adding the position, making it full-time or at least 40 hours a week, would allow somebody to gain some additional experience, and would help us in that it would be more continuous as far as a position. Other recommendations that we have, the summer intern in the natural resources position. As you're aware, we added a natural resources coordinator position this year, but with the increase in development again, he's been busy doing a lot of things relating to tree and natural resources issues. There's some things that aren't getting done during the summer. We started on encroachment surveys and things like that. The summer position would do that. We would be looking at promoting, or excuse me, making the communications coordinator full-time. Right now, we've got a 25-hour-a-week position on that, no benefits. If it goes to 40 hours a week, that would add about $33,600 per year, but given the amount of work that that individual is doing and needs to be able to do to tell our story well, we think full-time would be the way to go on that one. We have an upgrade of the accountant to an accounting manager position. That is something that is going to be really reflecting the succession planning that we're trying to do at some point. This individual might be stepping in as finance director someday, and we need to reflect that in terms of increased responsibilities, and that then hits pay. And finally, the last one is in the police department. We have a records technician that is due to, because of increase in responsibilities, would be reclassified as a records specialist. So all those items there are added for you. The part-time and the adjustments would be about $63,000. Adding the 4 full-time positions and the interns on a prorated basis would be about $233,000. Again, this is something that we feel is necessary for us to continue to move forward with where we're going with the city. Questions or comments?
That's Whiting.
Have you done the numbers on the full weighted positions for the new positions for the 2015 budget?
Yes. If you look at the information which was provided for you, the third page, for example, the 2015 cost for management intern would be about $41,000, facilities worker $66,000, graduate engineer $76,700, the 2 maintenance operators about $63,000. So it is something to keep in mind.
How's Clay?
If we total all these together, what's the increase in full-time? What's the
For 2015?
full-time
FTEs,
FTEs? Yeah.
we have 120.
133 full-time employees as of today. I couldn't tell you what our Parks and Rec part-timers add to that count. I can certainly get it for you.
What does this add to the count?
4.
4?
4 full-time.
I would say about 4.5 FTEs.
And over the past 5-6 years, how many FTEs did we reduce through not filling vacancies, things like that?
We added 8 this year.
You're saying how many reduced in past year?
Yeah, what
I would say
2013, what's our FTE count compared to what it was 5-6 years ago?
I can certainly pull that up for you in formal
Just
form. I would guess we
ballpark
went,
it.
prior to going up this year, we were probably down in the 6.5 to 7 FTE neighborhood.
So this doesn't get us to where we were 5-6 years ago.
It does, because I said prior to this year, we were probably down 6.5 or 7. We added 8 FTEs this year. So I would say we are currently at pretty close to where we were at, 6 years ago. And these additions for 2014 would move us up past
Okay.
that point.
Keep in mind that 4 of the 8 this year were full-time firefighters, so it's not an
Yeah.
apples-to-apples comparison.
Councilor Heitzman.
Where was the other 4 added?
An economic development coordinator, a natural resources specialist, a human resources technician, and a crime prevention specialist.
Other questions? Councilor Lehman.
I support the record technician to specialist, 2 temporary leads to foreman, 2 temporary leads to permanent leads, upgrading the 1 engineering tech 4 to project coordinator, adding a maintenance operator for parks, 1 maintenance operator for streets, and I need a little bit more information about a graduate engineer and what the function of that position is. And the rest of them I don't support.
Mr. Loney?
Well, Mayor, members of the council, Councilor Lehman, I could show you a map of the amount of projects going on, and we're busy.
I just wanna know what that position does.
That position, we need a lower level person with our other high level techs. We need somebody that can help out with more inspection, traffic counts, engineering surveys, to free up our higher level techs to do higher level positions. We have them doing way too many lower level tasks, and it wasn't that long ago, a few years ago, we had 3.5 more technicians when we were in the heyday, and we're approaching that level of activity right now.
Does
So-
that, Mayor, does that person, do they have the ability to do things like the stormwater things that you did out on Fourth and by Shenandoah out there. Not Shenandoah, Saracen. The one that you just redid the waterway there. Is that something like this person could do some of that stuff? or-
Mayor, members of the council, the person with help from our senior techs and senior engineers can certainly assist, and then they grow each year to a point where they can take that on. It'll probably take them 2 or 3 years.
So like the senior guys would say, I need this, this, this.
Yeah,
and this,
the
this.
senior guys will help him out, and he'll get the quantities together, do the staking over here. But the senior person would be
Okay,
overseeing that project.
so I could probably support that position too.
So can you explain for me why you don't support the others?
Which others don't you support?
Well,
I got lost
Write
in
it
that.
down, yeah.
the full-time communications coordinator, I wouldn't make that a full-time position. I've met the person once, haven't seen him the rest of the time, and I didn't think we needed one to begin with. Upgrade existing accountant to accountant manager. We just redid our accounting, so I'm not sure that that's needed just quite yet. Yeah, as soon as I get done with going down my list here. Management,
Actually, let's let her respond to
Okay.
that while we're talking.
all right.
One of the factors that we have addressed in finance, as you're aware of, I've also become the city clerk. The magnitude of the work being that we have basically lost a very historied staff has required me to pull off a lot of finance director accounting functions and place this responsibility elsewhere. And that is a lot of what is driving this request, is that I am not able to attend to the details when I was originally hired as finance director because of the new tasks I've taken on as city clerk, plus the training of the new staff that we've brought in.
It was staff's recommendation to consolidate them positions. Matter of fact, I think it was your recommendation.
Right, and as you realize, we also have lost a lot of historied staff. That brings a lot of training, a lot of upgrades, a lot of work that you have, and also as well as planning for succession. Translation, I'm not as young as I look.
All right, keep going.
Management intern, don't think we need it. Facilities,
You said that already, but why?
I haven't heard a justifiable case, in my opinion, to warrant it. Facilities worker, I guess I would need more information on that position too. I know we just revamped our facility maintenance department, so now to come back, and then on top of that, I mean, we've hired 8 just recently, now we're gonna hire 4 or 5 more. It's like, that's a lot of staffing in one very short period of time. So I think we gotta prioritize, and that's what I'm doing. So, I mean, you don't have to agree with me, that's fine.
That's what I'm asking you to explain why you're saying what you're saying. I mean, it doesn't do any good to just say no for no reason, so that's why I'm asking so we can have a discussion about it.
I don't think, adding a summer intern to natural resources is, I don't see that as justified either. We don't have a whole lot of natural resources. What we do have is under control of other jurisdictions, a lot of it is. And we have staff on hand that's more than capable of doing a lot of them functions. So I don't see that justification either.
Thank you for going through your explanations. Other questions, discussions? Councilor Whiting?
On the engineering side, you had, Mr. Loney had talked to some of that. Now, how much of that is passed through that we'd be spending on consultants?
Well, pretty much the 2 positions that I talked about, we would probably be able to collect most of those salaries through project cost and development fees.
But without having them, we'd be paying out.
Yeah, that cost is gonna be there whether you hire the position or not. I'll have to use more consultants.
Okay.
And so some of our consultant bills that we have now, we can probably keep the money in the city and in our pocket.
Thank you. Further questions? Councilor Clay?
Could I get a little bit more detail on the communications coordinator change from part-time to full-time?
Certainly, Councilmember Clay, this is a request that was made last year as well and not included in this year's budget, and so it's back again. I would consider it the top priority of the areas of the city that I'm responsible for supervising. Our communications coordinator currently works 25 hours a week. That individual is responsible for the city's website, our print newsletter, our electronic e-newsletter, our Facebook account, our Twitter account, all of our press releases, She jumps in as a strong writer on a variety of proofreading tasks and occasional help with grants writing, any kind of writing tasks. She's kind of a resource for our other city employees. And a lot of what we do in those things on the website, in the print newsletter, is kind of a recycling of things from year after year. We tell you about cleanup day coming up, and we tell you how to get rid of your Christmas tree, and we tell you what the city council adopted for a budget, and so on. We'd really like to get into a more proactive role of telling more of the stories that go on behind the scenes and educating our residents on what the city does, what we provide to them, how they can get involved, what conversations are coming up, instead of just what happened already at the city council meeting, but more a forward-looking thing, as well as being on hand when we want information to get out. When, you know, there is a large incident at a company like Rar Malting, we don't know what time of day that's going to happen, and the odds that it's going to happen within her half-day window of being here are not so great. So this would move it to a full-time position, and it would be a salaried position with somebody available, you know, full-time on a full basis. So
Can you talk a little bit as well about the website development and maintenance and that portion of it?
we do have a new website under development. We hope that it will launch right around the first of the year. The city's made a significant investment in that new website, but it will get old and dated without regular care and feeding and updating. You know, there's hundreds of pages to that website that need to be reviewed and looked at and updated on a regular basis. Communicating with our residents, while it is everyone's job here at the city, it isn't always the top priority. Sometimes our folks in each department need a little reminder of, hey, you know, it's been a while since we updated people on this. You know, give me the lowdown, the quick and dirty, the bullet points, and this person turns it into that message out to the public and keeps track of when was the last time we gave an update on this, and goes knocking on the door of that department and says, okay, it's time. You know, you give me 5 minutes of your time to give me the technical details, and she then turns it around for the public.
Thank you. Was that all, Council Clay?
Yeah, I was just thinking that concerning the website and being the social network person that I truly am, in the way things work today, that people looking at Shakopee to move here to live or to move a business here, that website is probably the very first thing they get 80% of their information from. And having it working well and delivering coherent, well-organized, positive messages, I think goes a long way to, you know, selling Shakopee to the rest of the world, anybody that's interested in us. It's going to be an item of the city that keeps growing in importance, as far as I can tell, and until some other new technology thing comes along. But I don't see that coming anytime in the next 10 or 20 years.
And as well, prospective employers who want to move here, that is one of the first things that they look at as well.
I'd like to comment on that position too. I think, you know, since we've had this position, we've made a great step to communicating with the public, and you know, I follow the little Facebook page updates, and not so much the Twitter thing, but someday maybe. But I think it's great. I think the community needs that transparency to see what's going on in the community, and like you mentioned, the economic development point is great to see that people are when they come looking at Shakopee, they see that, hey, we're out there, we're doing things, and they know what's going on. So I see a value in that.
Councilor Heitzman, you have anything you want to talk about with this?
How the facilities worker, didn't those guys get a lot less responsibilities when we brought on the janitorial staff hired out and that? So wouldn't they have more time on their hands to do this type of work?
No. The bringing on the contract custodial workers directly replaced two city employee custodians that are no longer with us. So it had very little impact on our remaining full-time staff, other than when one of the custodians calls in sick, it's not our problem anymore. It's the company's problem to send us a qualified substitute for that custodian that is sick, and whereas we were using our existing staff to fill those holes. So that's the one difference. Otherwise, we have been at 3 full-time facilities employees. We have a facilities maintenance supervisor and 2 facilities maintenance workers, and we have been at that staffing level since the 2006 budget.
Now, how many buildings do we have that they have to, like, they do sidewalks and stuff like that, correct?
They do. They focus primarily on the inside of the building, but they do clear the sidewalks of snow. They take care of 2 fire stations, the police station, the engineering building, the public works building, the library, city hall, the community center, and the youth building. Our buildings that operate year-round. Our seasonal buildings, such as the support building at the sports complex, 17th Avenue Sports Complex, the Huber Park building, are maintained by the park maintenance staff. Those are seasonal buildings that are winterized and shut down.
You done, Pat?
Yep.
Okay, Council Whiting.
I'd like to comment on the facilities part. Through discussions with staff, this is a higher end position. This isn't necessarily the guy that's gonna be out shoveling, although they could. This could be someone that has some training in HVAC, so we're saving money by having, rather than paying that out to a contractor, they can go, take a look at air conditioning units. If you walk around the building, there's plenty of different maintenance that can be done. Keeping things up and keeping things fresh.
Just
I see the value in it too.
Thank you. Just to clarify, this would be kind of a mid-level. Our maintenance supervisor is here, our 2 workers are here. We're looking to bring in someone in the middle, in part because our facilities maintenance supervisor is spending so much time transporting things from one building to the other and doing snow removal himself because we only have 3 hands, that the projects, we need to relight the engineering building before the year is out. And it's taken us all year to get those contract documents put together and things. Because the urgent everyday stuff is constantly pulling us away from the projects and the planning that also need to get done. So.
All right, any further questions on these? I have a couple real quick. First, Ms. Linehan, can we get an update real quick as to where we're at, where it looks for 2014 our tax base will grow to? Is it still 5.9% or is it beyond that now?
The numbers are still coming in. I think if we went with roughly a 5 to 5.25 growth in 2014, the discussions we're having with Scott County, 2015 is where it's going to be interesting to see where that growth factor goes. I do feel it's going to be higher than that, which will be, I think, a good positive gain that this community has seen after those years of decline.
Okay, so that's 5, we'll call it 5.5 increase in tax base.
Right,
And then
right.
overall, including these budget
Right.
changes that we've talked about tonight,
Right.
including the new positions we're talking about currently, we're looking at a tax levy increase of,
3%'s the cap,
yep,
okay? So what we're looking at is a 3%, and then the debt service levy roughly around 5% in total,
all right.
okay?
So,
And as we talked about and I had discussed earlier, part of what is funding this budget is the use of the fund balance. The city has a fund balance that under best practices should not exceed a certain percentage. Right now, we are exceeding that. We knew we were exceeding that because we know, one, Bruce has contacted us in prior years about his need for personnel. We knew there were going to be issues with the capital outlay and the infrastructure that would have to be funded. And again, you always have your crystal ball, but do you know if there's gonna be levy limits or not? On this year, it did occur, last part of the legislative session. We had an inkling this was going to happen. The use of the fund balance and the availability of the fund balance will be very useful for 2014 and 15.
okay,
I would not recommend the use of fund balance if I felt it in any way compromised the integrity of the city's funds.
perfect. So with these, it won't, with these extra things that we're looking at adding and talking about today, since our tax base has grown, it's not gonna result in a tax increase
The
for.
tax increase you're gonna see as we've talked about before, this is where it gets confusing. The only way you increase taxes is to increase your levy. The levy is capped at 3. We're increasing it for the debt service. That is where your tax levy impact is. Your levy is offset by its impact by the growth in your community. In past years, you've had the double whammy, decreasing values, increasing levies. It can hit, dependent upon the value of your home, it can hit harshly for higher valued homes. And then we can really complicate it by adding that market value issue in, but we're not going there
Don't
this
need
year.
to do that.
The one thing that I have always felt has been very useful for planning tools for communities is in an era when you have market value growth, you have the ability to address these growth issues that you're dealing with now. You've deferred a lot of your issues, whether it's personnel or infrastructure or the planning phases that you're going through during those down growth times. You are now looking at a growth increase. This is an opportunity to capitalize on that.
Got it. That's exactly what I was looking for, because I think that these are very important things that we look at, especially on the public works and on the administration side of how we handle everything. I think it's critical that we address these issues now before they continue to become bigger concerns. My one main question with this list of positions is the management intern for administration. I don't know if it makes sense to be utilizing an intern for those types of positions as opposed to a full-fledged employee. I would rather see it as an actual employee so that it's someone who will be here for years and consistent. I think that that difference between those is not between having a full-time employee as opposed to an intern. That difference is not, in cost, is not great enough for what we would be getting. It's just my opinion. Do you have thoughts on that, Mark?
I agree with you on that. I do also recognize, however, that it's double cost. And so I think this is certainly the management intern as proposed is something that we could live with. And we'll just see how things go in terms of projects that need to be addressed for next year.
Okay. All right, so this is the last of this section. Is that correct, Julie?
Correct.
Okay. Do we have, how does council want to see this moving? Do we like the list as it is? Do we as a majority want to pull things out? Anyone want to put a motion together on where we're going with this? And then we can discuss it.
Do you want to go through line by line and show of hands?
I would rather just get a motion out there, and then we'll talk about it. Because it doesn't bind us 100% to doing anything. It just gives a very good direction as to where we think we should go. Council Whiting?
For the purposes of discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the staff recommendations for new positions and the upgrades and changes to existing positions.
Thank you. Do we have a second for that? Second by Councilor Clay. So are there any changes that we want to see made to this? Councilor Whiting?
The two that I had questions with, I wrote down Mr. Lehman's and talked about the ones that I was for, but the interns, the natural resources intern, I'm not sure. It's not a lot of money, but I don't know that we need that position. The management intern, I don't know enough about, but I could live without that too, but I don't know what staff needs here.
We've heard Councilor Lehman's thoughts. Any other? Councilor Heitzman?
I agree with Mr. Whiting on the two interns. I don't really see they're necessary, and if we can save some money, maybe down the line, we may have to add a management person, but that's down the line, and we don't wanna put money into the intern and have him or her turn around in 2 years and go to another city, and we put all the time in training them and that, so.
Right.
Until we have to really have a full-time one, I would just put it off.
My concern with that is that as I work with Mark a lot, and there are a lot of things going on. There are a lot of projects happening right now. there needs to be, in my opinion, some more administration support there for doing things. So that's my concern about having it as an intern as well. I would rather have it be a full employee, but my personal opinion is there needs to be something there, and that Mark was willing to take the bullet on this one to help get things done for the rest of his staff, and I appreciate that. But I think it should be a full-time employee on there and not an intern, like you said. But I do believe that that position is extremely necessary, because with all the different things going on, like the garbage contracts and all those types of things that are happening right now, there needs to be more so that Mark is able to work more with department heads and keep all the communication between the entire structure, org chart, together. And I think that's my opinion why that one should be there. But the summer intern on natural resources, we used to have one. How long? It's been 4 or 5 years, probably 3 years since we had one. Oh, because you had it by yourself that it reported to you. So we used to have an intern, natural resources, and when I was on the park board, they did a lot of the grunt work stuff, basically going out and surveying where easements are and encroachments, and a lot of that stuff that should be getting done that's not getting done. It was a good way to get that going. Pat?
That was before we had the full-time natural resources coordinator, though.
No.
Have one.
No, there was the natural resources coordinator, plus a summer intern for those. And then when the natural resources coordinator went, the intern stayed for a few years, but there wasn't enough. There was a ton of work to get done, but nobody to mentor the intern, and so it got dropped at that time. So, but I agree that it's not something that has to be in here. It would be great, I think, to have it in here, but it could easily be pulled. Councilor Clay?
What kind of hours are we looking at for the management intern?
Management intern, this would be a full 40 hours a week.
So, and then what makes them an intern as opposed to full-time employees? Is that we're not paying health insurance and stuff on them?
Basically, it's benefits. They would also be at a higher pay range. I need to add that too. So intern, I think, is like in the $16.50 an hour range, and grade 1 of, or excuse me, step 1 of grade 6 is $25.10
This is full-time all year,
starting.
so it's not a person who's also in school.
Correct. This would be somebody who would likely have a master's degree at that point and trying to get into the profession.
All right, so,
I'll contradict my own thought pattern, because I did, through our economic development process before Samantha, I saw Mr. McNeil doing most of that work, and now with Samantha, he's still doing a lot of that work now, and we need someone to be the face for when companies come and question and ask about, Shakopee and moving here. We need somebody to balance out that space. Some of those details that he can't get to. So I do, there is some value to it. I just don't know enough about what you're looking at this position to do. So I guess maybe you can come back with some more information on it. What your job position description is on that, so we have a little better feeling on it.
Okay.
all of these items will come back at the in December for final approval, so that we're giving direction now. If we have major issues with things, we need to talk about it now and pull it out. But if this is a good idea as to where we're all going with this together for getting it done, we can always make changes in December if we have to.
I just think I need to know more details, and I know we'll hear more about each position, but this one, I think I'd like to see some more stuff on it.
Okay. So do you want to amend your motion to pull out the natural resources intern? Do we want to leave that in there for now?
I had a full motion for all of them at the beginning.
Right.
That's on the floor.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Do you want to amend that to pull the natural resources out, or do you want to leave that in there, or?
I'll amend my initial motion to remove the summer intern in natural resources. Who was the second on that?
Council Clay was the second. Do you accept that, or? Okay, so the amendment dies. So any further discussion on the amendments on the floor? Councilor Heitzman?
Could we, before the December 3rd decision day, could we get the information on this early? So we got, not the day of the packet comes out, and we got 4 days to decide on it.
Chris and I on the activity report, we'll pull
Yeah,
that together this
well,
week.
on all of them,
Perfect.
Bruce pretty much, I would love to see all the departments where he's got it down to how long it takes him to shovel a certain sidewalk. He's got the mileage down, hours, and that'd be nice for all of the departments to do, but, you know, I don't think we need an explanation on his guys. I'm all for hiring the guys. He's more than understaffed, but, you know, it's just earlier than the day before or the Friday before of the meeting where we make the decision. And I'd like to see that.
Councilor Lehman?
Well, we've added roads, obviously, we've added parks, so that's kind of a no-brainer. I don't know that we've added more facilities for facilities, worker. And a lot of the infrastructure that we put at the community center is brand new, probably still on a warranty, the chiller, the AC unit. So, that's where I'm coming from, that's why I made my original proposal. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Got it.
Well, that
Councilor Whedon?
facilities worker was not necessarily specific to the community center, it was all buildings, right?
No. And I think one of the reasons why, Mr. Mayor, one of the reasons why it was brought up was because there is a less than satisfactory level of service being done, not just at that building, but at several of them, especially those that are open to the public. Fire station has a tendency to get better maintained because it's the users, our people who are using it, but when it's open to the public, we aren't always putting out our best foot. So we'd like to take a look at how we
Wasn't
can
it-
improve that.
Councilor Lehman?
Wasn't it part of the 4 full-time fire guys on their downtime to maintain them buildings?
The
Clean
full
up in the equipment and stuff?
They're doing inspection. Right now, they're most keeping busy maintaining the equipment in the building, trucks, things like that. They weren't necessarily going to be out with brooms and dust mops.
With inside that fire building, I would imagine that they could clean up the appearance of the general public
Equipment.
walking into that building.
All right.
What?
Councilor Clay?
My thought, just, I don't want you to be offended that I didn't back up your,
No,
your thing.
I understand.
My thought on the summer intern for natural resources was that, you know, we're looking at $6,500, which is pretty much peanuts. But getting somebody out there doing the kind of field work that needs to be done, but, you know, for basically, you know, a few dollars, as opposed to having, you know, some of that we're paying $50,000 or $60,000 a year to go out and do, when they could be better using their time doing something more than just walking around checking for encroachments onto our easements. You know, it's.
Good point.
All right, perfect. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Councilors Lehman and Heitzman in opposition, so passes 3-2. Thank you. All right. Are we done with that budget item?
I believe so. We will be back on December 3rd, and we will also provide to council the requested information. Also, if you have other questions as you're looking through information, please email me, call me. If something pops up that you forgot about bringing up tonight, we're more than glad to respond back.
Thank you. Do we have any since that was a big item that we just talked about a lot of different things, do we have any further questions for Ms. Linehan before she goes? All right.
There will be an exciting PowerPoint demonstration coming up on the 3rd,
Yay.
along with, don't forget, the sales tax discussion.
Thank you very much. All right, item 11, council member reports. We'll start on this side. Councilor Whiting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wednesday, October 16th, the Chamber and CVB Board met after introducing their newest member, Joe Vaughn from the CAP Agency. Their first topic discussed was establishing a financial reserve for the CVB, and Angie has been working with Julie Linehan here, their finance director, who has encouraged such a budget move. They also discussed their upcoming budget process. The chamber is looking at establishing a business networking group, or a chamber net. This group will have 20 to 25 members meeting to establish business leads and partnerships. The board established a membership committee to work on alternative strategies to recruit and retain members. Wednesday, October 23rd, the interview committee met to fill the vacancy for the EDAC position that we voted on tonight. 2 candidates applied for the position, and of course, only one can be seated. I want to thank both candidates for their time. Thursday, October 24th, the Shakopee Diversity Alliance met, and we discussed the draft bylaws for the organization. Some changes and edits were made, and the bylaws will again be reviewed at their next meeting on November 21st at 6:30 at the Prior Lake YMCA. The group now plans to conduct monthly board meetings and organize quarterly membership meetings for the entire SDA group that will include things like programs and events. October 25th, Friday, I attended the grand opening for Real Gem in the downtown area and attended a very successful Grief Connection fundraiser held at the Pullman Club. Thank you to those who donated and made this a successful event. Friday, November 1st, the Scale Executive Committee met along with discussion of the upcoming general membership meetings, discussion regarding planning for the Met Council Thrive MSP meeting. This meeting is scheduled for immediately following this Friday's Scale meeting. Each city will develop talking points to address issues involving population forecasts, growth trends, significant infrastructure funding. Focus was also put on the 2014 legislative platform for Scale. Platform topics included increased general education funding, additional support for mental health services, debt service equalization, CTIB, corridors of commerce, eminent domain, tax court filings, levy caps, administrative simplification, infrastructure, economic development, warehouse and equipment taxes, and the opposition to unfunded mandates. More specific details regarding this platform should be included in the upcoming correspondence from Scale. Tuesday, November 5th, yesterday, I met with Stacy Crakes from the Scale First Stop Shop, and we discussed recent economic development activity in the county and the upcoming database for commercial properties, among other things.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Lehman.
No report.
Councilor Clay.
The Utilities Commission, they cover 2 things, water and electricity. On the water side of it, this year have cleaned 2 of the large above-ground tanks. Every once in a while, they need to be cleaned both inside and out to keep them in good shape, and then occasionally hopefully, spread out the years between the times when they have to actually scrape and paint them again. They also, this summer, have installed about 3.5 miles of water main, just from development going on. The electric department has been busy as well. Wanted to note that even with that big gust of wind that blew all my patio furniture off my patio on Sunday, didn't result in any electrical outages in the city. So far, we've got all these new companies coming in, or even before the buildings started going up, there's all this infrastructure that needs to be taken care of. For instance, this summer, or so far this year, they've laid about a mile of cable to serve Shutterfly, another mile of feeder cable for the Compass, and they also are going to be bringing in some large transformers that are on schedule to be on site in time. The new TE connectivity building has a lot of things going on there for electrical infrastructure that they're in the process of. The other thing is going to be coming up on your radar here in the next year or 2, is we've got 2 older, or the old original electrical substation for Shakopee that's across the highway from Rar Malting, or next to Mr. Pig Stuff, what used to be the old Dairy Queen. Very old, very outdated. It's pretty much reached the end of its useful life. It's owned by Excel, and we rent transformer usage from Excel on them. We are trying to get Excel to agree to either abandon it or turn over the site to us so that we can go in and update everything. Or failing that, purchasing land either to the east or west side of it and building our own new substation to handle the loads. We're all gonna need actually work on that one just to help the entire system and be able to accommodate all the new electrical services that are gonna be required in the industrial park on the other side of town. The whole town, I used to, before I was a liaison to SPUC, I used to think that, you know, each of these substations just served a certain area of town and that was it. But they're all tied into each other, so, which is good, because if there's a failure at one of these substations, the other substations are able to then usually pick up and carry that load that's lost, so that you don't have major parts of the city without electrical service just because one large transformer, you know, took a nosedive on you because a squirrel ate through something. So there's going to be that coming up, and we're also sharing a site with Excel on the east side of town, but we're going to need more service, so we're looking at also possibly putting in another substation on a 1 or 1.2 acre site next to the current one, and no longer use part of Excel's transformers, but just bring in our own. So there's, you know, we just sit here and vote on issues and stuff to bring businesses in, but then we've got city and utility commission staff that really have to do a lot of work to make things happen long before, you know, the first brick and mortar is laid for a structure. So it's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Lots of stuff.
Yeah. Thanks.
Councilor Heisman?
No report.
All right, I've got a couple things back on the 16th. Took a great tour of DEMCON, the new facility out on 169 with Angie Whitcomb from the chamber. We have an incredible recycling facility out there, and it was a big brand new building, and it will be very, very nice once they get it on board and rolling, which would be around the first of the year. Then on the 17th, attended crisis management, emergency communication training in the morning that the county was it Scale put it on, or was it the county?
Call it county.
We'll call it the county. And it was good. It was response management for when major issues happen within the community and how we handle that. On the 18th, met with state senators who were in town to do a tour of the prison, so we hosted them and talked to them while they were at the prison on the 18th. 22nd had intergovernmental working group meeting, and that we had talked about a lot of things actually. We talked about at the last city council meeting, the tribe is doing Valley View from McKenna to 21. A couple other things that we discussed was Trails program. It's a new program, grant program that the SMSC is putting together for $350,000 of money to go to mostly for connecting trail segments that are missing. And so I think we're putting together a request for that.
Our
right?
intern is working on that.
Yay, interns. Also, the SMSC is working really hard with MnDOT on putting an extra lane onto 169 southbound from where it goes from 3 lanes to 2 lanes to continue a 3rd lane all the way through to Canterbury Road. So they are working on that, and they're willing to fund it themselves. So we're getting MnDOT on board. We want to finish up the 101, making sure all the funding is 100% secured for the 101 river crossing. And then after that's done, then it will more than likely come to city council from further discussions. But the work is being done at that point. We also discussed the organics recycling facility that the SMSC runs, and they are planning on closing that or phasing it out in the next 5 to 10 years, somewhere in that range. So they're working on phasing that out as the equipment becomes obsolete, and are going to move it to a different location that's more rural and away from residents. So that is a very good thing. The plans are all yet to be 100% decided, but that's their goal, is to get that facility away from where it is at the current location. So That's that one. On the 25th, met with Met Council. I went with the mayors of Savage and Prior Lake and some representatives from the county, and we discussed with Met Council just what's going on in Shakopee and how economic development's happening here. And we talked a lot about sewers and sewer capacity for the city of Shakopee and Scott County. And there's a general feeling that Met Council is going to be cutting us off of sewer access, and we confirmed with them that that's not true as we move forward and continue to grow, that we'll still have sewer access as much as we need. So it was a very good meeting to get those things ironed out. And the 28th, this is my last thing, attended with Mr. McNeil, the Greater MSP annual meeting was in the evening on the 28th, and they featured Shutterfly project as one of the big wins of the state, of the region this year, so that was good. So there are videos of that on Greater MSP's YouTube page, and Greater MSP, just so everybody knows, is a regional marketing and advertising economic development arm that is funded by partners. We are, through Scale, a partner of Greater MSP, and it's funded by the public sector and the private sector and a lot of different places. So it was a really good meeting. They're having tremendous amount of success, and that was very good. So those are the things that I've got. Now we need to move to a closed session for labor negotiations strategy. Councilor Whiting.
I'd move to close the meeting pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 13D.03 to consider strategy for labor negotiations.
Thank you.
I'll second it with a friendly amendment of 5-minute recess.
Is that acceptable?
I'll accept that.
All right, beautiful. Motion and second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We are in recess for 5 minutes and then back into closed session for labor negotiations.
On the stabbing?